Cookery happened for me because schooling just didn't, academia just didn't click for me at the time, it didn't work. So actually I was looking for anything with my hands. And I was working loads during my teen years. I had a milk round and a paper round, and I worked in Primark on a Saturday, and I worked with my dad every other Saturday. Investing in your career over many years, you're just compounding layers upon layers upon layers of experience and education, and that stuff never goes away. The foundation doesn't go away, and it underpins you. I still want to be connected to the food. It's the bit that makes me really happy. I still have a very active role and a very sort of directional role in the way the food happens at Trinity. What happens with that? The guys there are absolutely incredible, and they look to me for guidance. So this is 2001, Time opened this little tiny restaurant in Clapham, mortgaged the flat that I bought a month ago. Everything's on the line, this little tiny thing in Clapham.
Our eating habits are changing. We're demanding better dining experiences, and the food market has never been so competitive. Starting and succeeding with a food business is challenging, but some determined and passionate entrepreneurs are flourishing. These people have big dreams, big passion, and big drive. They are disruptors, change makers, and innovators. They see a positive future. Many say that food business is too risky. Some say that it has huge rewards. Are you up for the challenge? Today I had the pleasure of sitting down with Adam Byatt from Trinity Restaurant in Clapham. It's a 1 Michelin star restaurant. He also has 3 other establishments, including a partnership in Brown's Hotel in Mayfair. Really interesting story Adam has from really, I guess, classical trained chef. Started in Claridge's and worked incredibly hard for 10, 15 years or so. And I think it's quite clear that that has been the strong foundation of his growth and success of his current business. He has some great insights into really getting to a stage where the restaurant is successful. He's had some downs and some failures throughout that process, but he's found a way to hone what he's doing and be very consumer focused in order to have a business that is commercial and works, but also do what he loves to do, which is really create amazing food and amazing guest experiences. So it was an absolute pleasure, super successful guy. Yeah, hope you enjoy it. So I know cooking and food was in your family quite prominently growing up. Your mother being a chef, your grandfather being a cook in the army.
Yep.
Was that a big influence on you growing up? And how did that influence your career then following that?
I don't think it was quite as predominant as it sort of made out to be, and I guess there was always a sort of notion for me to think about food and cookery. Mum gave up cookery when she had me, but she still cooked at home, and that was still really relevant. Granddad passed away when I was 18 months old, so I never saw any of that. So actually it wasn't kind of that prominent. And cookery, actually, it was around, but cookery happened for me because schooling just didn't, academia just didn't click for me at the time, it didn't work. So actually I was looking for anything with my hands. And I was working loads during my teen years. I had a milk round and a paper round, and I worked in Primark on a Saturday, and I worked with my dad every other Saturday. And then all through the school holidays, worked with my dad. So I was just working all the way through my teen years, really. And so kind of, it was always going to be a sort of a hands job, where I would use my hands. So
sure.
And food felt right. I enjoyed the time in the kitchen with Mum, and that sort of felt quite natural.
Okay. Did you cook a lot growing up, or kind of were you developing recipes at that level, or was it just enjoying eating food?
I was into it. It was 12, 13, 14, 15. I was into it.
Yeah.
I got recipe books, and I cooked at home. I made a beef Wellington at home, and did all this. I remember that kind of stuff, but not ridiculous, but I did cook at home, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the paper round,
yeah.
And so you're kind of a little bit into business to an extent as well at that stage.
I just wanted to get out and I enjoyed earning money from a young age. I enjoyed earning money. I used to do wash cars, get paid for that. Then I had all my young mates, this is like 11, 12, 13, all my mates coming with me, and they would wash cars for me, and I would take a little bit of their money from them, and I was like, oh, hang on, this is, earning. I liked earning a few quid.
Sure. So you're getting the buzz out of it as well, I suppose.
Yeah.
So did you know at that stage, or think at that stage, that you wanted to have a restaurant, or was it just more kind of, I want to cook and I want to be around food?
Oh no,
and then see where it goes.
No, generally no idea what I wanted to do at that point. I wanted to get a job. I was quite happy with what was going on, actually. We went to a careers open day that you have to do. Mum took me there. There was a sort of Dagenham Motors, there was the National Health Service, there was this, and then there was a Savoy Education Trust, which had the group of hotels at the time, the Berkeley, the Connaught, Savoy, Claridge's, and they said there was no queue, actually. There was no queue there. So I headed there, and she said, we've got an apprenticeship at Claridge's Hotel. It didn't mean anything to me at the time. Long story short, we took it, and Mum took me up there, did the interview, and I was still 15 at the time. I did my day's trial at Claridge's Hotel, and I've got offered an apprenticeship, and that started the next 4.5 years of my life.
Okay. I know you're starting with the apprenticeship, but you're very classically trained, even following that. And you had amazing mentors with John Williams and Phil Howard. So starting Claridge's and then going to Savoy, or the Berkeley, sorry, and then going to the Square.
Yeah.
How do you think that kind of sets you up? And also, I guess comparing it to today, where it's a bit more of a faster process, and people are moving up that ladder very quick. How do you think that's kind of put you in good stead and laid the strong foundations for where you are now?
I think it's really, really important that slowly, just investing in your career over many years, you're just compounding layers upon layers upon layers of experience and education, and that stuff never goes away. The foundation doesn't go away, and it underpins you. And I think there's a lot of people that just don't have that. A lot of young chefs these days, they don't have that foundation, and it is a worry, But I think spending 4.5 years at Claridge's with the Academy of Culinary Arts on that course that I did with them was that's the foundation of all of my cookery now.
Okay.
Yeah, really
and what about then the mentors? So what about John and Phil?
So I started there with
specifically.
So I started at Claridge's under a chef called Mario Lesnick, who was brilliant. But it was John Williams who was the senior sous at the time, and then came back to be the executive chef at Claridge's, and he was sort of my culinary father, if you like, my mentor, someone that understood me and got me and invested time into me, saw something in me, I think, and I latched onto that. I hadn't had grown up people outside of my family unit investing in me or taking time in me ever. So the first time that someone ever did that, I sort of latched on. I thought, okay, this is great, this guy's going to show me lots, and he really did. He took the time to care for me and show me and saw something in me, and that went on to pay off. Okay. So he was a really important part of my educational life, but he taught me more so much about discipline and organisation and working in a huge team of people, and respect for ingredients and cookery, and to love cookery. The relationship with Phil Howard and the Square and all that sort of side of it is completely different. That was much more, by then I was a 21, 22-year-old young man. I'd cut my teeth, I kind of knew where I was in a kitchen, I got it all. And working at the Square was a place where I really fell in love with cookery and food and restaurants. And that was the first time I'd ever been immersed in that. And I really fell in love with it. I thought it was brilliant.
Okay.
And Phil was just, Phil, as much as Phil was a mentor, he really worked like that. He was just an inspirational figure at that time in my life, and I just thought, that guy, he's got it right. The way he treats people, the way he looks at food, the way he treats food, the business that he runs, his values. That was inspirational.
So it was a lot more than just kind of cooking skills or food. It was developing you as a person and a mindset.
For sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what about the business side of things? So when did that develop in you? Was it kind of when you were working under people, or was it something that kind of you learned yourself? Or
you got all the way up to 25. I just cooked. I didn't do anything from 15 to 25. I didn't do anything. I just cooked. So I didn't know anything about business or buying stuff, or I'd done some orders at the Square, or ordered some stuff, ordered some food, put a few invoices in perhaps. That's it. That was the whole extent of it. I then left the Square and ended up doing a restaurant with Phil Howard in Fulham. Being in charge of this restaurant was inside a photographic studio, so it was there for a couple of years. It was good fun. We had good fun doing it. We did a lovely thing, but I was in charge of it. A very small operation. But all of a sudden, you've sort of got a bit of charge. You're starting to sort of see a little bit more about numbers, and so that was a little bit of immersion into it. And then Phil, I, and lots of other people opened a chain of juice bars in 4 or 5 sites across London. Doing wholesale and all out of a CPU, central production unit, and I was heading that up. So all of a sudden I was going to board meetings, looking at P&Ls, having to respond to people by email. Although it was dial-up in those days, not like it is now. And so I sort of started to get a feel for it, and then after a little bit of time, I just thought I want to open my own restaurant. I need to be back in the sort of fast-paced, high-end cooking environment arena, and I went about that journey, having no real idea how to do it.
Okay, but I guess doing the juice bars and having people beside you who'd been there, done that before,
yeah.
It was a nice transition into doing your own thing.
All of a sudden, you're sort of sitting in a boardroom with some really grown-up, well-off, grown-up, very experienced business people, sitting, and I've always surrounded myself with people that are genuinely, at another level than me, and so I'm very good at absorbing off of that and sort of taking that in and taking what I can from it. So definitely washed off.
Okay, and that surrounding yourself with people who have experience, is that a very conscious decision?
Yeah.
Or something it is? Okay.
Yeah.
So you actively look for people who are
I know
that
I've done that my whole life since I moved out of home.
Okay.
I know for sure that I've sought out people who are, who've got skills that I don't have, or they're in a better financial position, or they've got much more experience in business, or they've got experience in things that I don't have. I've definitely sought out to be amongst those kind of people and relished in that challenge. I think some people would shy away from that, and because I'm a survivor, if you like. So if I immerse myself in a situation that is I'm out of my depth, generally I'm going to learn to swim quickly.
Okay.
And then I can sort of dance amongst those people, and actually I will get something from that.
Okay.
And I've
sounds like you enjoy that.
I've consciously done that all my life. I think my dad said to me, you will only be as good as the people you surround yourself by. And it's a very simple piece of advice, but actually it's very true. And mainly because I was hanging around with a load of hooligans and going nowhere at the age of 14. So I think that's partly why I said it. But I think it's very true.
Absolutely. I think another one is you become the average of the 5 people you hang around with most.
I like that.
Well.
I'll take that.
Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting. Yeah, it's very interesting. And now I only have 5 or 4 friends. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the first restaurant then. It was Time, I believe.
Yeah.
So I know it was kind of ups and downs. You started successfully, your location, and then you moved, and kind of things went down here a little bit. I guess more because of location. Tell us about that in terms of the process, how you dealt with the move and then the decline in sales, and then the ultimate, I guess, closure of that. How did you deal with that yourself?
So this is 2001. Time opened this little tiny restaurant in Clapham. I'd gone and got a lawyer. I'd mortgaged the flat that I bought a month ago, my first ever flat with my wife. Mortgaged that, 110% mortgage to buy the restaurant. So everything's on the line. This little tiny thing in Clapham, and it just went off the charts. It went brilliant. It went from literally doing nothing to huge amounts. Didn't make much money, but it put me on the map. It got people talking about me. It got me, front cover of the Caterer, all this stuff. But we won a lot of awards and and you start to get a bit of notoriety and traction. 3.5 years passed. It was going well, but we weren't particularly making any money. I was earning less than I did as a comic at Claridge's actually, but I was having a ball, and we're cooking some great food. It was really good fun. And then the Hospital Club in Covent Garden came along. Offered us to come and transfer Time to that inside their brand new members club on the first floor. An opportunity again, yeah, that's just an amazing opportunity, and I think partly what, as I was just saying, I now get to operate inside this incredible thing amongst these serious operators. Paul Allen was the owner, Dave Stewart from the Eurythmics was one of the owners, and some really high level exec people that I thought this has got to help trampoline us forward, right? So did the deal, pretty bad deal, as you do when you're 26, 27. And you know what? It was, but we moved, and it never sort of turns out as you think it's going to turn out. We did the best we could with it. We were very inexperienced. You know, we went from there was just 10 of us at time in Clapham, 10 people, and we went to 110 staff overnight. Wow. We were catastrophically underfunded to be able to deal with that. The turnover levels were 6 figures on a weekly basis, way above 6 figures on a weekly basis. It was, you know, to be doing that when you're 28, it was pretty hardcore.
Sure.
And a lot of stuff to juggle. You know, there's a lot of moving parts in a business like that, and the deals were complicated, and we were operating the food and beverage for the club upstairs. But I learned so much, you know, and ultimately it didn't work, and we ended up having to liquidate that whole company and put it into administration, pay off all the suppliers, and look after the staff as much as we could. And it was a very difficult time. It was the loneliest I've ever been in my life. It was very, very strange. Quite amazing to be, you know, surrounded by all these things. You've got, you know, people are interested in you and interested in what's going on. They want, you know, everyone wants a piece of the thing. And the moment it goes, bang,
they walk away.
It's like looking around, thinking, what's happened here? I'm like standing on Clapham Common on my own. It's quite bizarre. Yeah. It's a very lonely place to be. And we had our house mortgaged, we had the whole thing. So it was a very tenuous time. And but I don't. Obviously, I regret it because it was a difficult thing to go through. But I don't regret it in a lot of ways because it really taught me. It taught me loads. That was my business degree, if you like.
Sure. The School of Hard Knocks.
Yeah, it really was.
Very good.
And since then, you know, we've never had a problem with money and cash flow and profitability, and being a robust business first and foremost has always been the priority for me, and everything else takes second fiddle. And that has been a good philosophy for me, and it's worked, and I'm still here. So
very good. What's the biggest thing you learned from that business?
Well, I get. Partly to trust your instincts, because the moment the hospital club arrived and the deal was landed on my desk, I immediately felt it was the wrong thing to do.
Okay.
But the trappings, the mist of youth, the bright lights, very hard, you know, not making any money in Clapham, this is a great opportunity. Very hard to. Yesterday I turned down a deal I turned down the biggest deal of my life yesterday. Wow. And actually, I might regret it, might not. I feel happy about the decision I made, but it was a difficult thing to do. And mainly I made that decision because I just felt that there were some hospital-esque bits in there, and it was an instinct thing that just didn't sit quite right. And it was the same feeling I had then, and I just thought, no.
Sure.
Not that I'm not risk adverse. I've done loads of stuff since.
Yeah.
So but I'm just more conscious about when I make those decisions.
Sure. And you have that intuition now built up from experience.
Yeah.
So.
And actually, one of the things I tend to do now, when you go through a process of somebody comes along with an opportunity or a deal or whatever you want to call it, generally it's an opportunity, right? And either there's chemistry, really positive chemistry from day one, it all feels really natural, the deal goes through with no dramas, everyone's on the same page, and I generally just walk through those kind of deals and opportunities and do them a lot. If there's any form where it's really awkward to get over the line, or you have to keep going back over the same points. So generally, how that relationship starts out, it's only going to multiply times that. So if it starts out in a really positive, energetic, everyone's on the same page way, generally, it's going to, in my experience, they're going to end up being like that in a multiple. If it starts out awkward and a little bit difficult and hard to do and hard to come together, the lease doesn't quite work, there's too many restrictions on the site, all this kind of sort of stuff, generally that's going to multiply, and in 5 years time you're going to be in much worse place.
Absolutely.
So I tend to walk away.
Absolutely, I completely agree. It's almost like a date in a marriage, isn't it?
Yeah,
if
it
the
is.
date isn't quite right,
right.
it's going to get worse and worse. It's going to
That's right.
accentuate. Yeah, interesting. Okay, so let's move on to Trinity. So how did you get that up and running in the first place? So you're financially wiped out to an extent.
Yeah.
Mentally, you're trying to pick yourself back up again.
Yeah.
And you take a knock kind of
Yeah.
professionally to an extent.
Yeah.
How do you get up and running again? Like physically and then mentally and build it up again?
Mentally quite easily, because there was no plan B.
Yeah.
I've got no choice. I have a mortgage, I have a child, a young child, I have a wife dependent on me. But there's no plan B, there's no trust fund here, right? So this is what you're going to do. The choices are, I either go and now take a head chef job somewhere, no great shakes, but I could see very clearly that by the time I was sort of 40, I would be a sous chef in a 5-star hotel in London. Not that that's a problem, that's a fantastic job, but it wasn't the job that I wanted. That's not where I wanted to be. And so I thought, no, I need to have one more crack at this. And but I did apply for some jobs, and I didn't go to the trials and stuff. And I just thought, I've been on my own for the last 6 years. It's very difficult to. Thankfully, there was interest in me, but I didn't go to the jobs, and I didn't do it. And I just thought, no, I need to give this a go again. I stayed on at the hospital and did Hospital Club in Covent Garden. Did another year with them. Opened a new restaurant in the same site, but I was employed, so I was on the payroll. Which is quite a strange thing to do, but did that, and excuse me, while we were doing that, a friend of mine told me that there was a site come up in Clapham again, a site that I'd always really quite liked, quite out of the way, a little bit different at the time, and so I just took a gamble. I emailed the restaurant and just said, look, I'm looking for a site, heard you're looking to sell, are you interested in having a coffee?
Okay.
An email come back, just said, hi, I know who you are. My name is Angus. Let's have a coffee.
Okay.
We didn't have a coffee. We had a beer, and then we had loads more beer, and we sat down and we drank loads and we chatted loads. And that night we did a deal, and I was very transparent about what I could bring to the party. Equally, he was the landlord of the freeholder of the operation, operating a restaurant inside a building that he owned. He wanted to finish that operation and go and do something else, and I wanted a new lease of life. So we did a joint venture. Essentially, we opened a company, took a lease on his property of the restaurant, and we started to trade. And he did what he did, and I operated the restaurant.
Okay.
We took some debt. He put money, I put money, and we did what we could. And my sole aim, as I said, was to make sure this was a robust business first and foremost. Accolades, stars, and notoriety, that was second win. That's not a priority right now. Right now, this has to be a full dining room and has to work.
Sure.
And I did what I knew best, which was just to cook.
Okay.
So I cooked my socks off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And did he work alongside you on the business side of things, or did you have somebody else working on that at that time?
Yeah, Angus is a non-exec of the business.
Yeah.
He's not day-to-day, he's not operational, but he's always been an absolutely brilliant person in business for me, to help me, guide me through that side of it.
Sure.
I do most of it now, but I still talk to him about stuff. I only have this company and it's our company, and so everything I do, if I'm not sure about something, I will ring him and sound check him about it, and he'll give me some advice on it. And he deals with lots of other bits and pieces in the business that are quite tedious and quite time consuming, that would take away my time and not make my time very effective.
Sure.
And he's got a very wise take on a lot of the stuff in business, so he's very helpful for me in that regard.
Okay.
Yeah, he's been brilliant for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what about the other operational sides of
Yeah.
the business? So you're fully focused on food, you were saying at the beginning, which makes sense. But what about front of house and even back of house systems and payroll and things like that? Did you just recruit into that position, or did you have somebody supporting on the business side?
We just made it happen. We bought in. We had an accountancy firm, a payroll, a bookkeeping firm externally. So all that was outsourced for us. A company called Top Source that I've been working with for 15 years. Brilliant. And send all the stuff to them. So that was sort of took care of all the VAT, PAYE, payroll, supplier, debtors ledger, and all that side of it was all taken care of by TopSource. But I oversaw everything for that, so it was quite an immersion into that side of it. And then on the operational side, the day-to-day, I kind of had a pretty good idea. I'd run restaurants enough at that time. I had a good idea, and surrounding myself with great people on the front side. I took much more of an interest in the front of house, the wine, the service, the operation, and wanted like-minded people that wanted to give service like I wanted, and do it from that perspective. And we brought some brilliant people in, some people that have worked at the hospital with me, some people I've worked with before, to run the front side, but literally it was me as the head chef and another person as restaurant manager. That was it.
Okay.
And I had three boys in the kitchen and 3 out front. That's it.
Okay.
That's where we started. Simple as that.
Okay. So then, how?
It's a bit different now.
Yeah, I'm sure. Exactly. I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Like, so how has your role in particular changed? Now you've got 4 businesses, 4 restaurants operating. You've got a big team around you. You're successful. Business is running smoothly. How has your role specifically changed, and how consciously, I guess, do you maximize your time so you're effective in each place?
Yeah, this is the really tricky bit, because nobody teaches you that part. I was a very, cooked at Trinity. I don't know. Trinity went through a transition. It's important to understand this part of it first. We did Trinity for 6 years, from 2006 to 2012. In 2012, we then we'd paid off our debts, and we had a little bit of slush, so we opened another restaurant called Bistro Union. Great, successful, still going now, brilliant restaurant, we love it. 3 years later, we're 9 years into Trinity. I'm still cooking full time, like all the hours possible to try and do my thing. I'm still on the stove 9 years in, and we're achieving. It's a good restaurant. It's solid. Business is robust, like I said. And it's a really good business, and the food's great. It's got great notoriety and it's working. But 9 years in, it's starting to sort of dilapidate slightly. It's getting a bit tired, and it's kind of where do we go with this thing now? Because what happens now? And the key thing is that we then made a really big decision to invest a huge amount of money, close the business for 4 months, redo the whole business, build a flat on the top, build a new restaurant above Trinity. Redo the whole concept of the whole thing. Truth of the matter was, we were going to make it. Well, I was probably going to, at that point, move out to the country with my kids and go and open a pub there and kind of remotely operate Trinity. I'd sort of kind of done with the fine dining thing and sort of felt it wasn't quite right. So we sort of built it more in what you'd now see as the Ivy Cafe. We sort of built it a little bit that style. About 3/4 of the way through this 4-month project, I was sort of sitting there thinking, no, this is not right. The kitchen, I made the kitchen in there, and I just kind of made the kitchen really beautiful. And the dining room was looking stunning, and I just had this sort of moment. I went back in, and all the builders had gone home, and the dust sheets, and I was sitting in this thing thinking, I've invested so much of my time into this. And I rang my business partner and said, I'm going to go for it again and try and put this restaurant right up there and make it what it is, and be the best we can possibly be. So that plan is now out the window, which you supported. And then 10 months later, we opened, and 10 months later we achieved a star, and the whole restaurant, the ethos, the viewpoint, the way we worked, all changed, and we achieved a star, and everything kind of just springboarded from there, really.
Sure.
So then to get to how my relationship and how I work with the business now, that's important to understand that. So I did that refurbishment, and then spent the next 2 years fully immersed and fully grafting on the stove doing that, achieving what we've achieved today at Trinity. So you're sort of 11 years in, and then Bistro Union's open, upstairs is open, Trinity's open, the thing's going great. And now you need to sort of step back slightly. Somebody needs to be a head chef in the restaurant to allow me to step back slightly to see it, to be able to. I find it very difficult to motivate and support and be that source of positive energy and growth for the individuals that work there when I'm totally immersed on the stove. That is like really difficult to do. There are some chefs that can do that. I'm not one of them. I find that very difficult. I'm just completely
Immersed.
central focused, immersed in the food, and that's all I really. And it's very difficult to give the time that is really required, properly required when you're doing that, to the payroll, to the VAT, to the development of other individuals in the business, to looking at the minute parts of the business that are actually costing a shed load of money, and you know, we can make some serious savings and work better, work more efficiently, make a better guest experience, improve the restaurant. It's very hard to do all of that and be the guy on.
Absolutely.
And I'm not very good at being. I can't dip in and out of kitchens. I'm either when I'm in the kitchen, I'm in the kitchen. That's me.
Sure.
I can't sort of dip in and make something and dip out again and sort of pretend I'm involved. It doesn't really work like that. So
Okay.
I took a conscious decision, which was one of the hardest things I've ever done, to sort of step back slightly, put a head chef in place, and then make a year-long transition back from that. I still work at Trinity. I still work sort of 5 shifts a week at Trinity.
Wow.
And I do a shift upstairs, 4 shifts at Trinity, a shift upstairs, and now obviously my time with Browns as well came along. So my time, I still want to be connected to the food. It's the bit that makes me really happy. I still have a very active role and a very, very sort of directional role in the way the food happens at Trinity, what happens with that. The guys there are absolutely incredible, and they look to me for guidance. I'm busier probably than I ever have been. I'm more mentally stimulated than I ever have been, but I'm also really enjoying the stuff where I'm developing people, developing the guest experience, supporting the kitchen team, looking at ways that we can operate better, looking at ways that we can grow the company, looking strategically 3 months down the road rather than looking at next week. Actually looking at where are we going in this business in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, where is this going and what are we doing with it, and that I've really enjoyed that part of it. But I've had to sort of learn that and make it up myself. No one sat there and gone, okay, this is what's going to happen next. You know, I don't have an appraisal with anyone. I have an appraisal with myself in the mirror. You know, it's quite a difficult thing to do. I probably should do some business courses, but it seems to work. You know.
Very good, very good. What is it you think kind of fuels you or drives you? So you were mentioning you were 9 years at the stove in Trinity for the first 9 years, and now you're saying you're still doing 4 or 5 shifts and everything else. Like, what is it fundamentally you think is keeping me going? Like, is it a vision, something you're driving towards, or is it more kind of, I guess, simple? It's just to run a successful business.
Yeah, I don't want a fear of failure.
Okay.
That never goes away. I'm never could get to a point where I could be complacent enough to say, look, we're sorted now. I can just, pop into the restaurant 1 day a week, and I know full well that if you take that attitude, game over.
Sure.
That is, you'd get a year out of it. You'd get a year, and then after that, you would be in an absolute mess. So I don't want to fail. I want my business to be as brilliant as it possibly can be. I'm very conscious about the fact that there is 62 staff. The business is responsible for their livelihood. There's 4 directors of the business. There's 2 owners and 4 directors. I'm responsible for providing enough income to keep those 4 people happy in the business, and also I've invested most of my life into this thing. I had no 20s. I gave the industry took all of my 20s. No friends, no parties, no holidays, nothing. I had nothing, and I can't even remember half of it. So I've given it 30 years. I've been doing this now, but definitely the decade of my 20s, gone, just gone with I can't remember, nothing, and I don't want to lose that investment.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So you mentioned after success at Trinity, you went and you opened 3 more places now you're running. They're all different styles of concept. Did you ever consider building a brand and kind of scaling up one particular concept, or
Sort
was it always
of.
to do different things?
I know what you mean. But all 4 restaurants are the thing about the 3 in Clapham. Trinity is the fine dining Michelin star. That's the destination restaurant. That's a market. That there is a captured market, and we do that. There's only really us and Chez Bruce that quite close by, another amazing restaurant. But it's only really us that's our little market.
Yeah.
Bistro Union well, actually upstairs above Trinity is the casual dining. I love that little market we got there. Those are people who just glass of wine, plate of food, go to cinema, date night, group of girls, all sorts of stuff like that. There's a whole other casual dining market. Bistro Union was really born out of, I love this fine dining, I love what we do at Trinity, I love this level of what we do, but I also really like to make fish pie. And I really like to make shepherd's pie, and I like to make toad in the hole, and I like to make a burger, and because that stuff's delicious, right? There's a load of joy to be had from a beautiful fish pie. And any chef that sits there and tells you that's not true, it's all about haute cuisine, is talking rubbish. I love cooking that kind of stuff. I just don't want to cook it every day. That's not what I want to do every day. But there's a huge market that loves that kind of food. So we opened a restaurant that was about a sort of British neighbourhood restaurant. And actually, this worked and it got traction. It was in a pretty, Abbeville Road is a very beautiful part of Clapham. It's a lovely little street, but it is very much off the beaten track. So the traction and the footfall is quite low. So it was never going to sort of change the world, that restaurant, but it was always going to be a lovely little offshoot for us. And we toyed for many years to try to go, okay, this is scalable. The food is all the food you could scale, definitely. The brand was good. Everything was right and primed to scale, actually. But the moment we talked to some VC companies, we had people who approached us to do it. We approached some people, we wanted to do it ourselves. We looked at investment to do it ourselves. We really looked into it, actually. It terrified me when I got quite under the skin of it, because I just thought, I don't want to roll out a restaurant chain. It just sounds horrible. And it was very much at the time whereby Bill's was opening, Coat was just starting, Bill's and maybe Jamie's Italian. All of those restaurants, that was all starting to really happen. And what happened was we would approach 2,000 square foot sites in relatively prime footfall locations and just get nailed immediately by Bill's would come in and drop another 50 grand on the table, or Coat would come in and just wipe us out because of their covenant and their background. And so we just could not get a leg into any of these sites that we wanted. This went on for a few years. We had agents retained for us and everything, and we just couldn't get anywhere. We could not get the sites, or without paying an amount of money that just didn't make any sense, unless we were going to open 50 of these. And actually we just wanted to open like one, and then maybe one next year, and perhaps get to 5 and make it really beautiful business. No real kind of massive ROI exit plan or anything like that, just to do something great. So actually in the end we just didn't do it. We just stayed with Bistro Union and operate it as best we can, and it does perfectly fine. It's fine for us. Okay. And I'm quite glad in some ways, because actually when you look at what happened to all of that site, all that stuff now, I know that it would have ended up being like that, and I didn't really want to be part of that. Okay. Doesn't interest me. It's not great.
Sure, makes sense. Okay, so let's talk about Brown's Hotel, so and the partnership there. It's a relatively recent thing. First of all, what drove your decision to do that, take that role? How is it different to what you've done already? And how is that kind of working at the moment?
Well, it's very different because it's inside somebody else's property, and that's a new experience for me entirely. There's a few things that drove the decision. Reaching that point at Trinity whereby, okay, now I'm either going to stand on that stove until I can't stand here anymore in my 60s, or we're going to have to grow somehow. But if I come off the stove, I'm not just going to pop in every now and then. I need to come off the stove and do something else, or don't do anything else. There was a big it was a bit of a thing in my life, and I had talked to Brown's Hotel. I did guest chef with the wonderful Tom Kitchen in Veggiura Resort in Sicily for 3 or 4 years. So got to know the Roccaforte family and Lydia a little bit. Enjoyed my time with them, loved their hospitality, the way they pronounce hospitality, and so we'd talked. Actually, it didn't work out. We'd talked pre-Heinz Beck, post Mark Hicks. It wasn't right for me at the time, wasn't right for them. It never went anywhere, but it was all good. And then I think sort of fast forward 18 months, I was now in that place going, okay, I can do something else now. So we were probably either going to open another restaurant, or this came along and it made me take stock and say, okay, that's what we're going to do. there's a head chef going to, my sous chef who's been with me for 7 years is now going to become the head chef. The one underneath is now going to become the senior sous chef. My role in all this is going to change. I'm going to do this. It's going to be good for the business, I hope, and it has been.
Okay. So kind of all fit together.
It's helped me evolve. I guess what I'm saying is it's helped me evolve my position within Trinity.
Sure.
And Bistro Union upstairs. It's helped me evolve that to become the person I want to be.
Sure.
In that. And then the conscious stuff about Browns was all positive, all about, okay, this gets me into Mayfair without any capex, right?
Yeah.
This gets me into a very large, successful, amazing company where I will learn loads. And I've been doing this for 19 years on my own. I don't get taught anything. I don't go on any courses. I fudge my way through, and it all seems to just about work. Maybe I can learn something. Maybe I can look at the systems and the procedures, the efficiencies and the way they do things and apply a little bit to my business. Maybe I can sound check some of what we do in our business against that and see if we're good. But also just nice to be able to grow myself and my brand and what we do into another environment and cook another sort of style of food. And I really enjoyed that part of it. Then, of course, there's also the progression side for my team. So the team's, at that point, the team's pretty swollen with some seriously talented individuals. What's going to happen, right? If there's a ceiling, they're just going to move on and become someone else's amazing talent, right? Yeah. So I have to provide growth and development and infrastructure for them. So this was a great opportunity to do that as well. So lots of those guys have gone on to take senior roles at Browns, which allows more people underneath at Trinity and Bistro Ups to come up as well.
Sure.
So it's development and growth for the company, development growth for me. Brilliant location, great to work with an amazing company like Roccaforte Hotels, and I think most importantly, I knew I could make an impact on that business.
Sure. Okay, makes sense. Very good. Let's talk about food. We've got to talk about food.
Please.
So in terms of, I guess, your menu development process, obviously you got a vast repertoire and experience. How do you practically come up with a new dish? Like, are you consumer focused to a large extent, or is it kind of just a natural progression of a menu, or is it just seasonally, or what factors go into that?
It's a little bit of all of those things.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's categorically guest consumer focused. That is the driving force behind what we put on the menu anywhere, is me thinking about that guest sat on table 4 getting served that plate of food, and what do they feel about it? What do they feel about that plate of food when faced with the bill? So how do they feel about it in value for money? Is it delicious? Does it bring joy and happiness and is it delicious? And all those things, that's definitely where it come from. But in terms of the innovation side, what's really interesting is that, I guess when you're young, you just cook. You cook in other people's restaurants. You start your own restaurant. You cook a version of that. Cook a version of what you've learned. It's very natural. Then you basically just cook. You don't know. You just cook all this crazy food because you've got access to the world larder, and you just cook everything that's in front of you, and you slowly trying to sort of develop what your style of food is. And I've never been very good at kind of going, okay, this is my food. I'm not really like that. I just cook what I think is delicious, and sometimes it's a little bit rustic, sometimes it's really, really refined, and sometimes it's kind of. So I've never been brilliant at that side of it, but I just cook really. It genuinely does come from the right place. Everything I cook is cooked because I know it's going to be delicious, and I love cooking it, and I enjoy the ingredients and the process. But one really nice thing happened, really, I guess, over sort of 4 or 5 years ago, where I just got to a point where I just felt so happy and so confident in what we do and how we treat food, that repertoire just honed itself in and became the repertoire that I now carry, that I love and adore, and everything stems from that. And it makes it so much easier for me to just, I'm like a recipe machine. I sit there sometimes, I have to write recipes for like menus for 4 different restaurants, spring menus. Okay, that's a day and a half's work. It's like a lot of menus to write. If you think about in-room dining at Browns, canapes at Browns, afternoon tea at Browns, Bistro Union, set menu for spring, the upstairs set menus, the upstairs feasting menus, the Trinity a la carte menu. You sit there and write all those menus. Basically, it all comes from the same sort of headspace, but they're all different for different markets.
Sure.
But the repertoire of how we treat asparagus, or we treat a chicken, or how we treat a pork shoulder, or what we do with we're always going to serve blood oranges and rhubarb with a version of, and that, we're very comfortable with where the food is, and that is very important. That has been a real relief. So there isn't too much innovation that needs to happen. I'm not particularly interested in innovation. I'm interested in what we do, doing it better than we did last year, refining it, buying it better, cooking it even cleaner and simpler, taking another thing off the plate and making it even simpler and even, and actually now our food is pretty simple, but incredibly difficult to do.
Sure. It almost sounds like it's a kind of a funnel approach, I guess, in the kind of the longer term, and then for a dish as well. So you start it very broad, and then you get very narrow, and then you have your thing, and then for a dish as well, you kind of start broad and rustic, and then you refine it. For sure,
it's exactly like that. Okay. And when I sort of say to the boys in Trinity, okay, let's do this red mullet dish with some bouillabaisse sauce, very simple. And I'll give them that direction, and okay, great, the season's right for that. Okay, go. They'll produce something. And generally speaking, not so much anymore, but generally, all I would do was walk in and take 5 things off the plate and leave them with the 2 core components and say, eat that. And that's the essence of the dish. That's the heart of the dish. That's what you're giving your guest. Anything you would then add to that is a dilution, in my opinion. So let's not add, it has to justify its place on the plate.
Sure.
And I think that part of it, they learned that now, and we're very good at that.
Okay, very good. And Michelin star you got, very good. How did that change your approach to the menu, to the food, to the operations, and to the business as a whole? Did it change? Or?
It didn't change very much. We changed when we did the refurbishment that I talked about. When we changed that, we changed our approach and our style, and we genuinely targeted cooking at that level, operating at that level, with the hope that we would achieve a star. And not shy away from that. We were very targeted about that. I'd worked in that environment most of my life. We operate a restaurant which has got tablecloths and Zalto glassware and waiters in beautiful uniforms and minimal turn times and beautiful paper the menu's written on, and we cook with wild turbot and lobsters, and this is a restaurant that is operating at the very highest level. If it doesn't have a star, it's incredibly difficult to justify all of that stuff and the price tag. But actually, we didn't put our prices up, but essentially, it justified everything. It made everything come together. It was the final piece in the jigsaw. It was an incredibly proud moment for me in my career to get to that point. I'm very chuffed. Big box ticked in my life. But also for the team as well, to work towards that as a team and to achieve that as a team is brilliant. And I still think Michelin holds the highest regard in terms of accolades there is, and I value it, and I'm very grateful for having it, and our business is all the better for it, because it also gives us a sense of confidence in what we do. We not that we weren't confident before, but it genuinely gives us a sense of real belief in what we are and what we do and what we stand for, and the way that it's like someone saying, no, that is right. What you're doing is right. And you spend a lot of years thinking, is this right? Sometimes you're packed to the rafters, it's brilliant. And the other day you're looking at 12 covers in the dining room back in the early days, and you sort of think, what, is this right? We've investing a lot of time and energy into this. Is this right? Is it off kilter? But
it's almost validation or stamp of approval.
It is a validation, and that validation is really helpful. It was really helpful for me, and it's helped us to just go. Okay.
Very good. Would you go for 2 or 3 stars, do you think, in Trinity or somewhere else?
I think that's a different ball game altogether. I'm really happy with the fact that Trinity, being a 1-star neighbourhood restaurant, you always run that fine line where you're trying to be it's like a home for some people to the restaurant, because it's such a neighbourhood restaurant, surrounded by all these chimney pots, and people pop in for a glass of wine, and they don't care if it's got a star, they don't care anything. They just pop in, they say hello to me, I say, Adam, cook me some dinner. It's like that still. Right. Of course there is a destination side of it, and of course there is the high-end side of what we do, but it is still just very comfortable with what it is. Moving that into a 2-star restaurant whether we could do that or not doesn't really come into question. It's more a case of, is Clapham ready for that? Are my guests happy? Would they be happy with that? What would the cost of running that kind of restaurant be, and the impact therefore on the menu ticket price of that establishment? Does it then push itself above its market? I think about these things a lot, but ultimately I just want us to be the very best we can possibly be, and if that ends up going further, then who knows? But I certainly have the team to be able to do that.
Sure.
But right now, I love what we do, and I'm very proud of it.
Sure.
And I have no desire to sort of do anything crazy right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And again, it sounds like you're fully consumer focused, I guess, on the commercial side of it. So
Yeah.
whether to decide whether to go one route or the other, it depends on the market and if the consumer
sure.
there is ready for it.
For
or
sure.
wants it, I guess.
For sure.
Yeah.
You know, if you think we opened in 2006 in Clapham, if the restaurant was a Michelin star restaurant in 2007, it just wouldn't have worked.
Yeah,
It would have closed.
sure.
So actually, because Clapham was not ready for that then.
Okay.
You know, the price point was like £25 for the first 4 years, £25 for 3 courses.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
now
So-
we are what we are.
Okay. So you're operating kind of in a bit of a niche space. So like you said, it's specialized neighborhood or destination and
Yeah.
white tablecloth.
Yeah.
What's your opinion of the general high street and I guess kind of central town kind of areas and the demise of the bigger chains, the struggles that are clearly out there? I guess you're slightly separated from that, or do you have this similar
I think we
struggles?
are.
or
I think
you
we are slightly separated, but it's tough.
Yeah.
You know, since we look back on it, I think we turn over something like £1 million more now than we did 3 or 4 years ago, but yet we make the same money.
Wow.
Near enough, not quite
crazy.
like that. But that's not. Nothing's changed in the business. That's pension and rent and rates and service charge, and now I have to pay for this. Now my refuge charge has gone up. Minimum wage has gone up. You know, everything has gone up exponentially, and there's only so much you can charge a guest to have dinner. And so actually, it is more difficult and more challenging, and the margins are smaller for an independent local restaurant. There's no doubt about that. And there's also no doubt that if I stripped all that away and we just became a kind of casual eatery, potentially we would have a much simpler life, and we would probably make more money. But it's not really why I do it.
Yeah.
It's not what I do it for.
Sure.
I'm not interested in that. And actually, when I look at some of these restaurants that, you know, that came in with these massive chunk of change and outbid me on these sites for Bistro Union and all that stuff, and now they're just in liquidation.
Yeah.
You just look at it and think, that's just rubbish. How much of the time have you focused on food and guest experience and quality and training and investing in people? Zero. And now you're just scrabbling around in the gutter, you know, in administration. It frustrates me that was allowed. The landlords got greedy, allowed that kind of stuff in, and didn't look more deeply at the operation side behind it. And I think the high street needs a clear out.
Okay.
I think it's
So
time
you
for
think
a
it's a
big
good thing?
clear out. Yeah, I think it needs. I think it's a good thing.
Yeah.
I think if you operate poorly, selfishly, you're not about giving to the guests. You're not about investing in people. You're not about buying slow, well produced, local food, cooking it properly. If you're not about that,
Okay.
then you don't deserve to be on the high street like that.
Okay.
And there certainly shouldn't be 10 or 15 of them. No.
Sure.
No.
Okay. And what about the guest experience then, and consumers' palates and demands, like the whole experiential social media side, even kind of the food people are looking to eat, and the trends of health and veganism. How have you seen that, and how do you adapt to it?
It is. You've got to have your finger on the pulse of what's happening in the market, what consumer change, what they want, and you've got to give them what they want. Ultimately, Trinity now has more vegetarian and a vegan dish than it ever has had in its life. 50% of the menu at Brown's is vegetarian. Sometimes upstairs is over 60% vegetarian.
Okay.
and that's not, but we don't work it not like that though. So that the vegetable is the hero, and then the seasoning, the umami, the extra level of flavour is brought in by protein-based products, which are easy to take off and leave that as a vegetarian dish. So we work much more like that. So we definitely react to consumer demand. My family eat vegetarian 4 days a week. The whole team at Trinity eat vegetarian Monday to Friday.
Okay.
Friday night they eat fish, Saturday they eat meat, Sunday they eat meat, and then back to Monday to Friday again they eat vegetables only.
Okay.
Vegetarian diet.
Very good.
Partly for health, partly because it makes them think about cooking vegetarian food that way. You just can't ignore it. This is the way that the world is moving. You can't ignore it.
Yeah.
And like always, everything in moderation. Right? I want to eat meat. I'm not going to stop to eat meat. And I think, but I will only eat really good quality meat sometimes. And when I do, I'll really enjoy it. I'm not going to eat cheap factory meat 6 times a week just because it's just not really. Surely that's obvious, right?
Okay. And how do you keep your finger on the pulse? So you eat out a lot, or you're reading kind of industry journals or publications or something, or a bit of everything?
Yeah, I think a bit of everything. I surround myself with, the team are very much got their finger on the pulse. I do keep up with what's going on social media. I read a lot. I eat out as much as I possibly can. I think that all of that stuff and your experience, you put all that into a melting pot.
Yeah.
And you hope that you're in the mix.
Okay. And what about social media? So internally, so how do you manage that? And how do you kind of see, or do you see any impact of that, any tangible results at all? How important is it to the business? Really,
it's very hard. It's the golden question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is there any tangible feedback?
Yeah.
Does that social media effort we put into social media, does that convert to bums on seats in the restaurant? I've got no idea.
Okay.
I could never answer that. There's a big following. People seem to like it. It gets our message out there. It keeps us in the mix. Keeps our message going. And then other days I just think, actually, let's just bin the whole lot. Let's close the window, because I hate the fact that people get a little sneak preview into something that actually should be such a lovely surprise when they come into the restaurant. All the wonderful things that we do that aren't obvious, and then the food arrives. I've never seen this dish before. I'm guilty, everyone's guilty of perhaps not going to a new restaurant because they've already seen all the food on Instagram.
Sure.
And looked in and thought and made their opinion about whether they like that food or not. Everyone's done that.
Yeah.
And actually it's really sad. It's really sad. I'd love us to be a restaurant where no one had a clue what the food looked like, ever. No photos, there was never a photo of it anywhere on the internet, and you arrived and you got this food and you had this amazing surprise because you'd never seen it before, looks amazing, and you get the full concept of where it comes from, and you eat it and it delivers on the plate, and that would be lovely. But that's, unfortunately, those days are gone.
Sure.
So I think it's a necessary evil, social media. Having said that, we definitely, without a doubt, we've messaged out about, we've dropped a table of 6 tonight, the guest is sick, whatever, and we've solved that table. That's happened multitude of times. If we do our wine dinners or our Sunday lunch clubs at Trinity and we're a couple of covers short, we might put it out, and we always do fill it back up again. Whether that's directly related or not, I don't know, but I think it's a really helpful tool.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I know you're quite active kind of publicly as well. So you do some TV work, your books, your writing, etc. Why do that? And again, do you see any benefits from that directly to the restaurant, or is it something else?
I think the restaurateur game is as much about making sure you're giving the guests what they want as it is a marketing game. Especially nowadays with the volume of restaurants, the competitive nature of restaurants in London. Unless you keep your name front and centre, you will fall off the radar, regardless of how good you are. It's very difficult to keep yourself front and centre. So actually, I do Saturday Kitchen twice a year. That's it. A, because it's in Clapham, filmed in Clapham, and the owner of the show is a friend of mine, and I like it, and I like the people, and it's a brilliant way to put yourself on the BBC in front of millions of people, and just keep that name out there. And there's no harm in doing that whatsoever. The writing is different. I love writing about food. I really enjoy it. So that process I really enjoy. I enjoy articulating. Most of my communication is done, a lot of it's done by email, but only because so that I can sit there and write the email, reread it. I never ever send an email direct. I always put in a draft and I reread because I can really get my point across if I write. So I like writing. So that's slightly different. And then I think as a chef, there is a little bit of it where if you reach a certain point, I think you've got a responsibility in this industry to give back and to inspire new people and to bring people through and to show the right way to do stuff. I think you've got a responsibility to do that. So I take that quite seriously. And part of it is just making sure we are out there as a company, as a brand, and people are still seeing us and making sure that message, that language, our values are out there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What are your plans for the future? Do you see plans for growing the business, or what is that vision?
Yeah, I think now we've reached we've sort of come up to a point now we're on a really nice shelf where it all works. It all works. Don't do anything particularly stupid. This will keep going. The only value in Trinity is for me to own that restaurant for a long time, and for it to just become an institutional restaurant that I can still own, and there's no value in me selling the restaurant. That's not going to happen. So it's more about just owning the restaurant, making it as great as we can. We've reached this really nice point, a point at which now we can just assess any opportunity that comes along and say, that's not right for us, that's right for us, never going to do that one. You know, if I'm going to do another restaurant, the location and the site needs to be 110%. I no longer am at a point now where I need to take a slightly ropey site because I can't quite afford to do a nice one, and I have to fight tooth and nail to make that ropey site great. And no, I will only now take a good site.
Sure.
So that's quite a nice place to be. Gives us options, makes us be able to sit back a little bit, look at what's going to happen next.
Sure.
I think there'll be some changes in the UK in the next 18 months on the high street with landlords, with employment, all that side of it. There'll be some changes. There'll be some stuff that we've got to react to, but we're small, we're nimble as a company. We can make change. We can make quick reaction. We can adapt to situations very quickly. I'm pretty good at that, and I feel confident that we will be able to ride through, with what we do, and with the notoriety and the reputation that we have. So now it's really just a case of let's see what comes along.
Sure. The business is kind of comfortable at this stage now.
Yeah, but not complacent.
Yes, sure.
But I'm not out there going, okay, what's next? Where's my next 10 restaurants coming from? No, absolutely. I'm out there going, okay, this is our nice. Look after the house.
Sure.
And let's see what comes along.
Sure. It's a really interesting story, and going back to even the time days, you can very clearly see your growth even from speaking to you, and your development and learnings. It's very interesting. So what would you say is kind of, if there was one kind of biggest thing you've learned throughout that whole time in business or even career, is there one thing that has really stood you or kind of
I think
got you to where you are today?
It's very obvious, but that the hard work, blood, sweat and tears, the hard work that goes into a business in the beginning, people always overlook that. Okay. You often see that picture, that thing of the ballerina with the one shoe's really beautiful and pretty and amazing, and one shoe's completely torn up and her toes are broken, and you see that, and people only ever see the front end of it, right? But actually there is no shortcut to getting to success without putting in an awful lot of hard, dark times and hard days, and there's no shortcut to that. Okay. And a lot of people think there is. You can just get to the other end very quickly, and you can see when it's not underpinned with foundation and hard work and graft and a little bit of sacrifice.
Okay, so I guess that's the advice you would give somebody maybe with a food idea who wants to start something and start out in a restaurant or grow a restaurant group. It's fundamental hard work.
Yeah. If you think you're going to work less than 70, 80 hours a week, do something else.
Makes sense. Okay. One final question: who inspires you at the moment, or who do you think is kind of coming through that is going to be noteworthy or be a kind of success?
Wow.
Or even somebody who's more established, who's been around a long time. Is anybody you particularly kind of hold up
There's
there?
so many great chefs in this country right now. Wow. I mean, we are like the melting pot for food in this country right now.
Sure.
It's amazing. And do you know what? The industry is such a lovely place right now.
Yeah.
You can't. I don't know who to say because there's so many great people.
Sure.
Look at what Tom Cage is doing. Amazing. Gareth Ward. Amazing. Jason Atherton is just doing brilliant stuff that is inspiring all other chefs to grow and be confident in what you do, and that's amazing. There's so many. Look, Claude at Bibendum, amazing. Claire Smythe, still love Brett Graham at the Ledbury, still doing brilliant stuff. There's so many people that I look up to and just think those guys this country is amazing. It's a real honour to be a part of that.
Yeah, very good. Well, it's been a pleasure, Adam. Thank you very much
My
for
pleasure.
coming on.
Thank you. Thanks
It's
for having
really
me.
admirable, I think, your level of humility. And you're even saying going into Browns and learning so much there as well. I think and it's a kind of tribute to yourself, and even I guess it's contributing to your success as well, that you are still very, very open to learning. So absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Very well done, and best wishes for the future.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for having us.
Cheers.